Story 1. Not really. I am more afraid of having a painful death. I would preferably like to have a peaceful, painless death if possible. Story 2. Dying without reason is not acceptable. Death must follow a proper sequence of logic. So, while taking my last breath, I do not want to wonder, why? I want to be able to say, oh, okay. Story 3. Death itself is not so concerning. It is the process of dying that worries me. However, as long as it is quick, I do not mind. Story 4. I'm afraid of dying because I do not know what happens afterward. If heaven is real, which I like to think it is, then that is amazing. But if it is just nothing, then that scares me. I hate big open spaces, nothingness, and darkness, so that scares me. Story 5. There is fear of the unknown and the possibility of pain, but the idea of oblivion is strangely comforting to me. Story 6. I have a suspected aggressive sarcoma, so yes, I am scared. I do not know how much time I have left. I am in my 20s. Feels like a death sentence. Story 7. I am pretty young, so ask me again in 70 years and the answer might be different. But I guess my answer is not exact. Life is designed to be used, spent, and enjoyed. I want to have a long, happy life and then quietly pass away in my sleep. That is kind of the dream. Story 8. I am not afraid of dying at all. Honestly, I kind of look forward to it. Life feels so fake and exhausting sometimes, like we are all stuck in this endless loop of chasing things that do not really matter. Death, to me, feels like peace, a break from the noise. Story 9. No, dying seems like a salvation to me. There is nothing to care about anymore when you are dead. But I am very afraid of suffering before death. Story 10. No, I am here for a good time, not a long time, and the good times have been severely lacking. I am tired, just waiting for life to let me rest in peace. Story 11. No, I want off this ride. I am not having a chill time. Ideally, I want to stick around as long as my children need me and cannot get that elsewhere. Story 12. Extremely. I refuse to allow my life to be so boring or tedious that I would not be engaged. I am also extremely fortunate to be in a position to take control of it. Story 13. I am afraid of a lingering, disfiguring, or painful death, but mostly I hate what I will be missing. I just hope I can live to see my grandchildren grow into adults. Story 14. I am not so much afraid of death as I am afraid of dying, of the process. I cannot imagine a scenario where that process is not violent. Even the idea of dying peacefully in your sleep seems like a mythology for something darker, such as being aware that your lungs or heart have stopped working. Story 15. I am not particularly distressed. Between having a mental disorder and a degenerative health condition, I have been ready for a while. I am seeing all the right people to manage both, but it does feel like if I were a pet cat or dog, I would be overdue for that one last trip to the veterinarian. I am not overly fazed, as I feel I have been here before. I had memories that were not mine when I was younger, and I think I will be back here again eventually. Story 16. I think I go through phases of being terrified of dying and then not thinking about it at all. When I am in that phase of being scared of death, the thing that scares me most is the pain of losing my breath. But then, of course, you just die, so is it really painful? Story 17. I just don't want to die traumatically, such as in a car crash or being mutilated in some way. I wouldn't mind drowning, suffocating, or being shot, since these are relatively quick or cause unconsciousness before death. I just don't want to bleed slowly or be mutilated. Obviously, I would like to die peacefully in my sleep at the age of 92. Unfortunately, the chances of dying traumatically in a car crash or accident are much higher than that. Story 18. Not really. I think I am more worried about the pain and void I would leave behind, especially at such a young age. But I often think about death and have learned the whole process so that I am at peace with it because it is just part of existing. Story 19. No. I have worked very hard my whole life and tried to be a caregiver to everyone. I am really tired. Dying would be a time for a good rest. Story 20. Yes and no. I am afraid to die because I do not want to right now, and I am scared to see what happens next. If I were older, I would not be so afraid. I just want to see what happens in my life. I want to meet my future children. Watch my sister grow up, and just spend time with family. Story 21. No. We all need rest, and death must come someday. Maybe that will be the time I finally rest. I have a problem with how I die, though. Story 22. Actually, ignorance is bliss. Being a doctor, I dread any terminal medical condition, so yes, I am afraid to die. Story 23. Yes. Very afraid. I know it is going to happen someday, and I wonder if it will be illness, injury, or something else. Hopefully, it will be from old age in my sleep. Story 24. No. My life is pretty much settled. I am cruising to the finish line and having as much intimacy as possible along the way. Story 25. No. They said that if you learn how to die, you learn how to live. It is only by accepting death that we learn to live our lives to the fullest. Story 26. I'm not sure if it's somewhere up high because of my fear of heights, but other than that, I will accept dying if it is quick and does not involve my fears. Story 27. Who fears death? It will come one day, so what is the point of fearing it? Just enjoy the ups and downs of life. Story 28. Not at all. I mean, I do not want to be dead, and I fear dying slowly and painfully, but actually dying is indifferent. I will not experience it. Story 29. Not at all. It is not death I fear, but how it happens. I would hate to die of a horrible, slow, but debilitating disease that makes for a torturous existence. In many ways, death is a welcome relief. Story 30. No, I am just worried about the people depending on me now. I wonder if I will say farewell to myself. It is a strange thought. Story 31. No, it is pointless to be afraid of the one thing that I know will happen. I am afraid of leaving people in pain when I die. My brother's death was a mess. Nothing was planned and everyone argued about everything. Paying for everything was a mess and planning was a mess. We did not know if we should disconnect him or not, and deciding that was a nightmare. The more planning and preparation you do, the less work you leave for your grieving family. Story 32. The type of death matters more than death itself. Surprise meteor strike? Yes, please. Devoured by fire ants? No, thank you. Story 33. No. Why? I almost died in 2003 and realized when it happens, I will not remember how it felt, so there is no use sweating over it. Story 34. I used to be afraid, but then I had a dream a few weeks ago that I died, and it was like going into a very peaceful and deep sleep. When I woke up, I realized that I was not afraid of death. I hope that when I am 90, I simply go to sleep and do not wake up. I will have had a good life and will be ready to move on. Story 35. No. Every night I wish I do not wake up in the morning. The reason is I am tired of living with multiple chronic illnesses, and it is becoming harder to manage them in the United States. Story 36. Lying on the soft brown earth. It must be beautiful and peaceful. I will embrace it one day. I will welcome it one day. Story 37. I'm not scared of dying, but of what is after death. I get anxiety just by thinking of it. It is very scary. Story 38. I am ready to call it any time. 47. I worry about my children and want to make sure they are secure before that happens. Story 39. Yes, if I die, I do not know who would take care of my family. My parents are already elderly, and my sibling is still in school. I am the only one who can work to support my family. Story 40. I specifically do not want to die before I finish recording the album I have worked on for a long time. It is a kind of legacy, almost like my baby. If I had a child, I would want to stay alive for them, but I do not. Story 41. I will only be afraid of dying until all my children have grown from good kids into good adults. Once that has happened, my job is done, and I can go at any time. Story 42. Yes. Death itself does not scare me, but dying does. Will it be painful, prolonged, or instantaneous? Story 43. Extremely. I don't know what comes after, but I was raised to believe that it is heaven or hell, and neither of them sounds appealing for eternity. I don't want to find out what if they are real. Story 44. Nope. I already know how I am going to die and roughly when. Besides, I am already emotionally dead. The last time I was rushed to the hospital, my concern was that I would miss the Endgame midnight showing. Story 45. For the longest time I wanted to die. Now, it is one of the things I fear the most. I hate that we know life still goes on when death occurs. It is not comforting to me at all. Story 46. Yes, I am afraid of dying because I still do not know if I will really have a conscience after I die or simply cease to exist. Even though I am Catholic and believe in God, I still have doubts about what will happen after death. Story 47. Yes and no. Like many people, I thought about the concept of death and how it would happen to me. As an agnostic, I believe it will be absolute emptiness. I will die and everything will disappear for me. The world, my memories, myself, any sense of existence at all. On one hand, I'm not afraid because if I die, I will stop being aware of anything and will not exist at all. But at the same time, this frightens me, that you will cease to exist, which means that everything that happened to you is considered not to have happened. How can you understand that you no longer feel reality? This is not hell or heaven, not pitch darkness, void, or anything else. You will not be able to understand it, and that is scary. That is why I made a vow to myself that no matter what happens, I will live and hold on to life, even if it is difficult, even if I suffer from illnesses as a disabled person. I will live. I will try to live because after that I will not care. Story 48. No. Only curious about what happens after. I'm prepared to die any day, in any way. I have imagined it all already. It used to terrify me. What if I die in prolonged agony? My life stretched out only to suffer. Then so be it. Others have. If I have to too, then so be it. The pain of death and uncertainty of the afterlife is what scared me the most. Now, I keep an open mind and an open heart. I don't fear the Reaper. Story 49. You know what the problem with the end of the world really is? It never happens. I do not wish to be tortured or in agony when I go, but I do not fear the end. Worrying about it only makes it happen sooner and causes stress. I have been living totally honestly with everyone. My children are older and my wife left me, so sometimes I welcome it. But seriously, I do not want to die. I am too stubborn to quit and too much of a perfectionist to walk away from this situation easily. Story 50. I am not afraid of death. You know death is real. No one can escape. But I fear what will happen after death. What if I fail? Story 51. I am more afraid of what comes after, even though my very spiritually believing mother, in a good way, and a slightly less spiritual version of myself are pretty sure that death is not the end. Story 52. Not afraid. I am only 38, but I feel like I have already reached my ceiling. And no, it is not a high one. Quick and painless or slow and painful, whatever it takes. Story 53. Every now and then I have that kind of, what is next? Phase and feel terrified about death. But on most other days I do not worry about it. Story 54. Yes, because I suspect there will be a moment when you cannot breathe but you are still conscious enough to process it, even if it is a relatively painless end. Story 55. I think I am only afraid of the concept of my life ending right now. Am I afraid of death? Absolutely. But what I fear more is the concept of my life ending before I even figured out where it was supposed to go. Story 56. No, because sometimes I think it is better than being alive. This is also my big motivation to turn my life around and to get over the most traumatic experience I have ever had. Story 57. I'm a 75-year-old male. No, not really. I'm not in any hurry to die, but do I fear it? Not really. I don't fear my death. The only fear I really have is worry about my children and grandchildren. Will they be okay? Will something happen to them that, if I were still alive, I could have helped with? That is often on my mind. Yes, my children are in their 40s, independent for many years now, and doing okay. But they are still my kids. As a father, I still worry about them. That is not something I can simply turn off in my mind. As far as myself goes, I've had a reasonably good life. When I think back, mostly my mind filters out and ignores memories of things not so good. There were plenty of those, but to me, the good outweighs the bad. There is nothing I can do to change the past. So I am, overall, happy and feel blessed. As far as fearing death itself and the possible pain of it, I am very intimately familiar with death and pain. I have almost died a few times. As a youth, age 12, I drowned and had to be resuscitated. When they pulled me out, I was not breathing and had no heartbeat. One of the men helping was a trained medic in the United States Army for years and performed successful cardiopulmonary resuscitation on me. At age 17, a store robber shot at me several times at fairly close range but fortunately missed. At age 19, in Vietnam, a B-40 rocket exploded next to me, nearly completely severing my right leg at the thigh, not to mention peppering the rest of me with fragmentation. My memory of that is spotty, in and out of consciousness, but I was told that essentially I died in the emergency room they finally got me to, but they managed to revive me. At age 28, I was trapped in a compartment aboard a combat ship that was flooded with pure ammonia. They managed to get me out in time, and I spent some time in sickbay with chemical burns to the lungs. The doctor told me to thank the men who responded to that alarm so fast. He estimated that even a few more minutes in there and I would not have made it. At age 41, I had a series of gallbladder attacks which I ignored in terms of going to the doctor to be checked out. Up to the time that it could be ignored no more, I was sick and feverish. Another stone moving caused so much pain I could not walk. Later, the doctor told me that by rights I probably should have died. I had severe peritonitis, an internal infection, from several lacerations caused by passing several very large gallstones. Some of the largest the doctors had ever seen. They not only had to remove the gallbladder, but also parts of the stomach and intestines, and put in some Kevlar patches. At age 67, I found out I had small cell carcinoma. Another stupid move on my part. I had known something was drastically wrong, but just lived with it, kept the fact hidden from my adult children. My wife had died before then. I ignored it until the day I vomited blood and passed out. I woke a couple of days later with 4 separate intravenous tubes in me, a tube down my throat, another up my urinary tract, and more. My daughter was there and I could not talk, but she could. She said I had been pretty badly off. She showed me a picture she had on her phone, showing enough of me to know who it was, and also a medical monitor still attached to me with flat lines on it. The next picture showed medical personnel rushing in with a crash cart. A bit later, I had my eyes closed but could hear a doctor telling my daughter she should call relatives and friends because he thought there was little chance I would make it. Well, I did make it. My point is I have faced death several times and trust me, I am all too familiar with pain. There are many things I've left out in this comment. But as a result, the idea of dying is both very real to me and not some fearful thing. The pain? I've been in pain before, but pain no longer bothers me as much as it might someone else. We are familiar with each other. I can have pain that would have others begging for relief and for pills to control it, where I just find it annoying. Not that I am immune to pain, it just affects me differently than it would a person with less experience with it. I don't like it, but I do not fear it either. Story 58. No, once you are dead, you no longer exist. Nothing exists. Therefore, I do not worry about it and try to enjoy myself. Story 59. Not afraid of dying, just afraid of how. Additionally, I am a caretaker for my mother, so I am afraid of what would happen to her if I died first. But in general, dying would solve most of my personal problems. Story 60. I'm afraid of pain in the dying process depending on what happens and how I go, but I'm not scared to actually die. In fact, I'm looking forward to knowing what really happens to us. I'm not religious, so I think in the worst case it will be black nothingness, no consciousness, just like before I was born. And if that's all it is, great. Story 61. I am more afraid of how I will die. I do not want to die painfully, but I also do not want to die suddenly. My ideal death would be falling asleep and never waking up again. Story 62. Yes, very much so. It is a biological response wanting to live when you are faced with the potential of dying. I never knew how much I wanted to live until I had a near-death experience that I was aware of. I believe other people have different experiences than mine, but my experience is quite common. Story 63. Not afraid of death itself, as I have come to terms with the fact that we will all die someday. If I had the choice, I would live forever, but that is unrealistic. I just prefer that my death is peaceful and painless, and that I do not see it coming. Story 64. I am not currently afraid of anything. Fear is a temporary emotion for me. If someone was shooting at me, I would be terrified of dying. Story 65. Terrified of it. I had a parent die when I was young, so I don't know what it is, but I've honestly turned into the worst hypochondriac. It would be interesting to see if there is a correlation between losing a parent at a young age and having health anxiety. Sometimes when I am sleeping, I get jolted awake because I think my heart is slowing, and every lump and bump causes concern. Story 66. Fear of missing out on life. I have many dreams, and death is the only thing that would stop them. I am not scared of heaven, hell, or nothingness, but I am scared of not having the chance to live my life to the fullest. Story 67. Terrified. I am 36, and it feels like yesterday I was 22. I would really rather continue to exist and not just fade to black forever, but it is kind of what I imagine I would feel like if there were suddenly a moon-sized meteor visible in the sky on a collision course with Earth. The sheer, vast, unimaginable helplessness of it all has me basically numb to it. It is so intrinsically and all-encompassingly horrific that I just stop feeling anything about it. Hopefully, we figure out digitizing our brains or becoming cyborgs before I die. Story 68. I did not used to be afraid of dying because I was delusional and thought I was invincible. One of my psychedelic journeys cleared that up and awakened the primal fear. Story 69. No, you do not experience death at all. You need a functional brain to experience or consider your situation. I will not be sad or afraid that I am dead. Story 70. The number of comments I hear from precious humans wanting death as a release from this life. Has our society beaten people down to that point? Something has to change. That is not normal. I do not remember people from my parents' or grandparents' generation longing for death as a release. Story 71. I am not scared of the act of dying. I am more scared of how I will be perceived by people after I am dead. I do not have much family, and I have made family out of friends, but I am scared that I will die and be, for the most part, forgotten. They say you die twice. Once when you die and once when someone thinks about you for the last time. I am terrified of being forgotten as if I never existed in the first place. Story 72. Yes, because I do not know for sure what comes after, if anything. Plus, being forgotten. If there is nothing and I am forgotten, what was the point of all these struggles? Why am I working hard for the next achievement in capitalism? Story 73. Yes, death is horrifyingly sad. The world goes on as if you never existed, showing that ultimately you do not matter. You will never taste a good cup of coffee again, watch a movie, or listen to a new song from your favorite artist. You will never see the beach or experience beauty again. If you have pets, they may or may not understand what has happened. If you have young children, you will miss their graduations and weddings. Then death itself, the possible pain, and the possible awareness that you are fading. I do not see why anyone would not be afraid. Story 74. I am not afraid to die. Death happens to everything at some point. I would hate to go painfully or slowly. Story 75. I am not afraid of being dead, but I am at the age where my body is starting to break down, and I really hope it is not a long, painful, drawn-out death. Story 76. No. I was born with bilateral clubbed feet and have lived with chronic pain in every step for over 30 years. Cannot wait for it to end. I am not going to rush the process, but this body hurts all the time and I want it to stop. Story 77. The cause may be. Death itself is not really, because I read the Bible and know what is on the other side. Story 78. Yes and no. Yes, in terms of not being ready right now and not wanting anything bad to happen to me. No, in terms of death being inevitable, so I just hope it is quick and painless when my time comes. Story 79. I am not afraid of dying. I am afraid of living long enough until I am unable to do basic things. Story 80. No. I now understand why when people get older, they wish time would pass faster. I get it now. Life becomes depressing and lonely as time goes on. Story 81. I am not afraid of death, but I am afraid of dying a slow or painful death. I have watched too many people experience that kind of death. and I would rather spare myself and my loved ones that pain. Story 82. A few things. I do not want to die from an accident such as a car crash or drowning. I also do not want to die young. I am 55 now and have many years ahead of me. 2 years ago, I was hospitalized with an atrial fibrillation incident, which was the first and only one I have had. They had to sedate me and use a defibrillator to restore my heart rhythm. My only thought before sedation was, if this is the end, I have accomplished more than many others in my life, so I am okay with that. Story 83. No, because of my faith, I know Jesus Christ will be there ready to receive me as long as you accept him in your heart. Story 84. Yes, I am very much afraid of dying. My life is difficult, and the only reason I am still living it is because I am afraid of death. I would rather live a difficult life than die because it is scary. The uncertainty of what happens afterward and the part where you try to kill yourself is also frightening to me. I am not only afraid of dying for myself, but I am always scared for my family and my dogs. Just today, I took my dogs to the veterinarian, and there was a dog that had died. They had just covered it with a sheet. Honestly, I was scared and heartbroken and was even afraid for my own dogs' lives. I think it is mostly because I am not emotionally strong enough to handle death, and I get it from my mother. I will tell you about an incident that took place just today. When we got the dogs back from the veterinarian, my 2-month-old puppy, who had a 102-degree fever, received 3 injections. When we came back, he was limping on his right leg and dragging. He was unable to walk. My mom started screaming and crying, thinking something had happened to my dog. She started panicking and called my dad. After the call, she calmed down and realized that his leg was probably hurting because of the injection. We put him to sleep, and now he is actually fine. So I guess that is where I get my fear of death from. Story 85. Dying? No. Dying before my parents? Absolutely not. I do not want to leave them with the pain of my passing. Story 86. I am not afraid of death. I am afraid that the process of dying will be painful. Let me say goodbye one final time, then take a pill that lets me pass in my sleep. Story 87. It is not really a fear of death as much as others have said it is the fear of the pain associated with death. I was raised religiously, but I am not religious anymore, so I do not know about an afterlife. All I can think of is it is like going under for surgery. Either you wake up or you do not, and there is no passage of time between those events that you are consciously aware of. Story 88. I am religious, but I will not pretend I know where I will end up. I try my best to lead a just life, and I will accept wherever I end up. I believe that God's judgment is perfect and there are no mistakes. If I end up in hell, then I deserve it. I have found a great deal of peace in this. Story 89. Truthfully, I am more afraid of oblivion than of death itself. It is harrowing to me that one day I will just shut down and that will be it for the rest of time. Sometimes I feel like Cinderella's carriage driver. A few hours ago I was a mindless rat. Now I have the full human experience thanks to a miracle, and in a few moments I will go back to being a mindless rat forever. I can hear the clock start to chime midnight. Oh, and just to get ahead of a counterargument, but you have spent most of the past billion years in a state of non-existence. Do not worry, it will be just the same. No, you do not understand. That just makes it worse for me. Story 90. I am not even afraid of dying a painful death. Once it is done, it is done. I am afraid of surviving and going into crippling debt. With my life I have worked so hard to build crumbling because of it. Story 91. I am afraid of the dying process but not of death itself, especially how my family would cope afterward. Story 92. Dying? Yes. Death? Not really. It is not something I can even experience. I am not in a rush to die though. Story 93. I have recently developed a fear of dying because I do not want to leave my wife alone in this world. The world is harsh, and she is like a child. I am worried that if something happens to me, she will not be well off and will not be able to handle many challenges, let alone the grief of losing her partner. Story 94. Not even a little. I personally believe that death is not the end of the conscious experience. Even if it is, it would still be better than the difficult experience that has been my life. Story 95. Death itself does not scare me. It is more the pain and degradation involved in some deadly illnesses that you have to endure before dying. However, dying in a split second does not bother me. Story 96. Yes, kind of. I know it is inevitable and not something I can really control, but I also have obsessive-compulsive disorder and therefore fear a million different specific circumstances that will cause me to die. Story 97. Not currently afraid, but I do not want to just die either. If it happens, it will happen, and if it does not, then it does not, I guess. I just feel like I would not be sad if I were to die now because life does not seem to be going well. Story 98. No, because whatever may be on the other side sounds a lot more fun than the current side, no matter how unknown it is. Story 99. Naturally, in my sleep and all that? No, because that is life. Being stabbed, shot, eaten, etc. Absolutely laugh out loud. Story 100. When I was younger, I would say no. Now, there are many things I have yet to experience, and I know the value of my life. There are people in it I want to talk to and be with. There are so many things I have not done that I want to. I have a business now, and I want to see it grow. I want to build a family. I want to travel. So many life experiences I would miss. I suppose it does not really matter afterwards if I do die because, depending on your belief, I will not be able to dwell on it. But that fact is scary too. That absolute nothingness. The feeling that there is this huge range of human history, and I will only be a small blip, and I will not be around to see where we go from here or how it came to be. It is sad. Story 101. I do not waste my time and energy on fear. When it is my time, it is my time. Nothing I can do will change that. Story 102. As long as the death does not involve being bedridden, pain and suffering, or an undeleted browsing history, I am good. Story 103. I am not afraid of the act of dying. I am terrified of saying goodbye for the last time or, God forbid, never getting the chance to. Story 104. I have two thoughts on this. 1. No, not really, because it is one of the most natural things that we go through. It is silly to be afraid of death. 2. Yes, the thought constantly terrifies me. Mostly, it is the unknowns. Will it hurt? What really happens after? What if you or I am wrong? How will I be remembered? Will I be aware of what happens to people I care about when I am gone? What if we are aware of everything while decomposing? What if I am not really dead and get buried alive? When will it happen? Will I know it is coming? Or will it be sudden? I am not sure which answer is better. How will it happen? Will I know it is happening when it happens? I am also not sure which answer is better. Story 105. Death itself? Not really, though I do worry and wonder what the afterlife would be like, if it does exist. But I am more afraid of what I will die from. Story 106. Dying, not everything around it. Leaving people I love, not able to do anything I love anymore. Not seeing the blue sky and white clouds. So the act itself, no, but everything else, yes, absolutely. Story 107. I am not afraid of being dead because I did not exist before I was born. However, I really do not want to die and really do not want to know that I am dying. Story 108. Yes, because I want to experience everything I possibly can. No, because I think the big sleep would be welcome after all these turbulent times. Story 109. No, life is hard right now and sometimes I would rather die than deal with the problems I am facing. I am a very spiritual person and I have a guardian angel, my deceased older sister, and I talk to her and God every day. I know I will be in a good place when I die, so no. Story 110. Depending on whether you are religious or not, it can seem very different. At this moment, I am quite afraid of death because I do believe in God. I just have not been putting in the work to improve my faith. Story 111. No, it is just the pain I worry about. But if you are already in a lot of pain, you may be hoping for the end. I believe there is more, and I will see my loved ones again. I believe heaven and hell are all about how you lived and affected other people. For example, if you kill someone, I think they will be waiting for you to torment you and harm you there. The more love you spread on earth comes back to you there. Story 112. No, I cannot wait to pass. The reason is that I am 51, and most of my family has already passed away. My body has been tired since I was 37, and life is quite mundane. Humans basically do the same thing every day. I have lived my life and am ready for heaven. Story 113. No. I'm excited for the day I go. I've looked forward to it since I was about 12. I've attempted my own life around 28 times and figured if there is one thing I'm bad at, it's ending myself. So now I just wait for the day it happens. My childhood and upbringing were abysmal, which is why I feel like this. I'm broken and I'm okay with that. Because I found duct tape and I'm making the most of it. Story 114. I am not, and I have been close a few times. My problem is not my own, but the people I live with. I feel that dying before my time would make me feel irresponsible because I have too many things to take care of and worry about, like my daughter growing up without a father. Story 115. Am I afraid of dying? Yes. Am I afraid of death itself? No. We did not exist for trillions of years before we were even conceived. I cannot imagine that it is much different than that. People say that the scary part of death is the non-existence of it all, but they fail to remember that we did not exist for all of eternity before this, and it did not make much of a difference to us then. Everyone and everything dies eventually. Death is just as natural a state as living is, if not more. Story 116. I'm not afraid of anything I cannot control. It is one of my life philosophies. There is already too much stress in real life. I do not need to add unnecessary stress. Story 117. A painful or prolonged death would be unpleasant. But no, I am not afraid of death. As a famous man once said, I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Story 118. I don't fear actually dying. I fear a near-death experience more. When you know for sure something is going to kill you, it is usually over in a second. When it is near death, you just wish it would finish the job. Story 119. It is not dying that breaks my heart, but the thought of leaving my daughters to navigate this world alone. Story 120. I am afraid. I feel happy and lucky with the way my life is going, but I fear it will all be taken away from me. Story 121. I do not think that far ahead, to be honest. I do not think it would bother me. It is just one less thing to do currently. Story 122. Not afraid of dying per se, but I worry about leaving my wife and daughters to take care of stuff I leave behind. Also, like Space of Soul said, I hope for a painless exit. Story 123. We are a group of people struggling with suicidal thoughts, trying to support others with similar feelings. I have attempted to take my own life 29 times, and I am 28 years old. I hope that one day I will find peace and no longer feel like a failure. Story 124. I fear seeing it coming. I fear having to sit and watch it approach. I fear suffering. Death itself? No. When it takes me, I hope it is swift and by surprise. Story 125. Yes, sometimes I am afraid of dying. I am still in my 20s. And the idea that at one point everything that matters to me right now will be gone is so frightening to me. Story 126. No, I am afraid of dying a painful death. Actual death itself is something I will have to accept, so there is no use worrying about that. Story 127. Being dead. Not at all. The process of dying, a little bit, but only about it being especially lingering. I figure once I am dead, it will not matter. It is not like I will be able to reflect back on it. Story 128. I do not want to leave too soon, but I definitely do not want to stay too long. My fears are not for myself but for my loved ones who are left behind. Story 129. Not in the slightest. I live in constant pain from physical disability and emotional pain from the circumstances of my birth. I have my own beliefs surrounding death that comfort me. In fact, I look forward to it because it would mean I am no longer in this pain and exhaustion. The only problem is, I am like a cockroach, and it seems like nothing can get me. I used to be suicidal in the past because of the pain. I took enough pills to kill a bodybuilder and somehow completely recovered and was fine a day and a half later. Story 130. Yes. I have no idea what comes after. My greatest fear is not that there is nothing. It is that after you die, you just start over, the same life with no memory of the previous one. You might make the same mistakes again, or you might not. However, you are always in the same life forever. Story 131. The older I get, the less fearful I am. I am not religious, so I do not believe in any kind of heaven, but I do think reality and existence are so strange that we cannot truly grasp them. I think there is more out there than we know, so who knows what happens when you die. Story 132. Actually, yes. I would want it to be on my terms, for instance, having set up everything for me to go, rather than, for example, decapitation by a cartel. Story 133. I am not afraid of it at all. I just hope the dying process is quick. In my sleep would be nice. Story 134. Not really. It will happen anyway, and I just hope it is going to be fast so I will not even understand it. It will not be hard for me, but for my beloved ones it will. That is why I am much more afraid of losing someone I love and do not really care about my death. Story 135. Yes, regarding the unknown, but no. The grief, anxiety, and cruelty of humanity are sometimes overwhelming. Humans are both complex and simple. The suffering experienced by family members, such as illness, seems like it should not be happening at this point in history. Story 136. Honestly, I am just going to hate missing the new technology. I am excited to see how we proceed in technology. I think I still have a good 30 to 40 years left in me. Story 137. No. People put too much energy into something ultimately unavoidable and too little into living. Do not let fear dictate your life. Live a life of generous love and growth, and you will live better and die better. Story 138. Death? No. Dying? Yes. It looks painful. I am going to be a heroin addict when I reach 75. At my age, you are crazy not to. Story 139. No. Been there, done that 3 times. Nothing scary or special. To be honest, it is the most blissful, euphoric, relaxing feeling you will ever experience. Don't rush toward it because life is definitely an experience one shouldn't take for granted. As much as I want to die some days, I know there are many people who would give anything for the time I have that they do not get to have. As much as I hate being alive, I will live for those people. Story 140. I am afraid of dying suddenly. However, at the same time, I do not want a long, drawn-out period of illness in which I become a burden and drain my children's inheritance. Ideally, someday the doctor will tell me I have a month to live, and then I will have a painless death. Story 141. No, but I'm scared of being aware that I'm dying before I actually do. The idea of knowing it's happening and that my loved ones will be without me is difficult. However, once I'm dead, I won't care because I will be gone. I am definitely not ready to die and do not want any time soon, but it is not something I am afraid of. Story 142. Yes, because I want to live longer or forever, or at least die for a while and come back with knowledge of my previous life. It scares me that one day I will be gone forever. Even when life is at its worst, I still fear death at times. Story 143. No. About 10 years ago, I had a pulmonary embolism, which was a very close call. I have been completely relaxed about the topic ever since. Story 144. Death itself does not scare me. I have almost been there before from a non-ending seizure called status epilepticus, and my experience was simply nothing. No light, no dark, no thoughts, no feelings, no emotions, no awareness, no sense of time passing, just nothing. An empty, endless void devoid of anything at all. That seems rather peaceful to me. I am more afraid of having an end that means nothing happens alone with no impact. I do not mean I want to make those who love me sad, but rather making sure they are okay before I go. Story 145. I am not afraid of what I will experience after I die. It will most likely be nothing. I really hate the idea of it in general, though. Story 146. Not afraid of death itself, but not a fan of how I am going to get there. I really hope it is not a horrible death that gets me featured on a crime podcast. Story 147. No, I have an inoperable brain tumor. I've been dealing with it for 30 years. I developed epilepsy at 33. I am doing okay right now. However, I have flatlined 3 times. I have already died and come back. I don't want to die, but it doesn't scare me. I have left and come back with no bright lights, closer to the best sleep ever. Story 148. When you realize that it is highly likely that once dead, there is no recalling or recollection of who you were, your memories, your fellow members of the human and animal races, the sensations, not even the knowledge of having lived for all of eternity. A senseless, infinite void, detached from time and space. No self, no sense, no now or later, simply nothing. As everything dies to you, so do you die to everything. The world as you know it collapses into a state of nothingness, not just from your perspective but also from everybody else's. For some, delightful, almost comically satisfying, the return to nothingness. For others, daunting and deeply unsettling. I do not fear the concept of dying, for that matter, as long as it is not unnecessarily torturous. I fear that, in my last moments, however cognitively capable I happen to be, I perish with nobody at my side. All I wish is to capture a final glimpse of those who mean the world to me and to make peace with everyone at last. Even if that which I most wish for and treasure is ripped from my being the instant I depart, with no recourse to ever recalling whether I achieved it. How cruel, yet how bittersweet and beautiful, this predicament that ails us. Story 149. I am not afraid of it because it seems far away, although it is getting closer every day. However, if I had a terminal diagnosis or were in a life or death situation, I would be terrified. Story 150. I am because we have a nonverbal boy in diapers. I hope that whoever is above allows us to go at the same time, or that he is taken before me, but I cannot die before him. Story 151. At first no, because years ago during my teenage years I had suicide attempts while growing up. Now that I have a child, sometimes the attempts are still there. When my mom died unexpectedly 2 years ago, I became scared to die early. Story 152. To a degree, I am rather scared of dying early and painfully, and not having time to live my life to the fullest. I just want to see my children grow up to be happy adults. Story 153. I'm scared of the cause and not really dying. Like boom, no more consciousness. I don't want to suffer or go through any pain. Just end. Story 154. Yes and no. There is the possibility that the actual process of dying will be quick and peaceful, or incredibly painful and absolutely terrifying. The reality is none of us know how we will pass away, and I find that ambiguity unsettling. Likewise, there is the metaphysical ambiguity of what happens after death. On balance of probability, it is likely eternal oblivion, no brain, no self. However, I also believe there is a non-zero probability that some form of metaphysical truth exists, such as an afterlife, reincarnation, a reset of the simulation, merger of consciousness into the universe, or quantum immortality. Take your pick. An ardent atheist may believe the probability is 0%, and a committed religious adherent may believe it is 100%, with their very specific belief being the correct one. I suspect most people believe the truth lies somewhere in between, which also generates a reasonable fear of the unknown. Story 155. I am afraid of knowing that I am dying while suffering or being helpless. I often look forward to just being done with this world, though. Story 156. So I suspect half of the answers are ingenious, but 100% yes. I feel the afterlife will be better for me. Story 157. I used to be, but I have been through so much and would probably be glad for some rest. The thing that scares me is leaving behind certain people. I hope they will be okay. Story 158. No, because I believe in reincarnation, but also yes, because I do not want those who love me to suffer. Story 159. As long as I am a devout Muslim and die while being a good person, I am content. I am just afraid whether I will be good enough to avoid having a bad influence on others and to respect everyone's rights. I hope the Lord will be pleased with me for doing good work of my own free will. Story 160. Only because I like living and I am 35 years old and have things I want to do. I am also taking care of my parents. More specifically, we only get so long to exist, then we are cast back out into nothingness. I want to be around as long as I can be, Story 161. I do not want my children to feel the pain of losing me or the pain of living without me. We are close and they are my world. As for me, no, I am not afraid. I have already come close a number of times. Story 162. As I get older, I think about it more. I'm not afraid, I guess. But there are so many places that I'll never go and things I won't experience. That's the part one don't like. You start thinking, is this the last time I'll ever do or see this? I love the music of Genesis, and Tony Bennett has his terminal songs. He said, "What's it like when you are doing something for the last time but you don't know it's the last time?" Story 163. No, I'm not looking forward to it. I really like my life. I would choose to stay here if I could. But I also don't believe that it's necessarily the end. I don't dread my cells dying and being replaced by the billions daily. That is all I am, one cell in the great being that is the universe. Story 164. Yes, the same answer my father gave me before he died. I'm afraid to leave my wife and children alone in this world. Story 165. Yes, but only because I do not want to die until I have a house and my wife is at least remotely prepared for an easier life. If she messes it up after I am gone, it is on her. Story 166. Yes, but mostly because I am easily thrown into existential crises. Basically, just like everyone, the notion of non-existence frightens me. I say just like everyone because most people are frightened by this, and it is the basis for religion. The human brain is like a computer that has a difficult time grasping the idea that it can be turned off. Because of that, human brains have always developed belief systems in which the human brain, or soul, carries on after death. As an atheist, I have to come to terms with the idea that my brain can be turned off and I can cease to exist. Until I do, I will be a little scared of death. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.